Hi, everyone. Welcome to A New View. I'm Kim, and I'm here with Shira, Lee, and Juji. We are four friends, speakers, and professionals from different cultures, backgrounds, and age groups coming together to offer healing and inspiration. Today, we are going to talk about being emotionally available. In a beautiful blog by Karen Nemo, she defines emotional availability as the ability not just to make an emotional connection with another person, but to sustain it. She says this is especially important in partnerships because emotional connection is a conduit to love. Ladies, in what ways have you learned to be available emotionally?
Well, I think I'll go first with this one. Now, this is going to be a blanket statement, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I feel like there's kind of this pattern where women as a collective accuse men of being emotionally unavailable, like just making these sort of like consistent statements about what we weren't getting from our partners. And I believe that our partner can only meet us where we are. So one of the things that I realized, because I too said that my first husband was emotionally unavailable, I had to check myself. I had to check myself, and I had to realize that I wasn't super available either, because I used to think that vulnerability meant sharing things about my past that were maybe uncomfortable or like sad or, out of the ordinary. And I did that with him when we first met. I shared with him things about my family, the things that, maybe you don't let everybody in your life know about. And I was like, check. I checked off all the boxes. I did my vulnerability homework and went about my business thinking that was what made us close. And like, listen, it's a good start. It's not something everybody can do necessarily, but that's not what real connection is. Real connection is in the everyday interactions. It's in like genuinely appreciating your partner, I believe. And one of the things that I was incapable of doing is showing my appreciation for him, because I saw that as weakness. There was a wall up when it came to our connection, because I had been hurt many times because of how I grew up. I didn't really have a good model for a healthy partnership. And so there was this, we were just talking about labeling. We were just talking about, these like avatars we create for ourselves. And my avatar was that I was too cool for school, right? And cool girls don't tell their partners how much they love them. Cool girls don't, express that deep appreciation for who their partner is. That's just not something we do. I told him about my messed up family, so that should be enough to have him know that I care about him. It's the unspoken stuff that always gets in the way. And so I truly believe that, vulnerability and emotional connection starts with us. We can't expect somebody else to give us something that we're not giving.
Wow. I have to say, this whole like emotional availability, just the word emotions, it's like when I was growing up, we didn't talk about that crap. Like it just wasn't in the vocabulary. Nobody really asked you, how are you feeling? You just kind of did the thing. You just like lived your life. You went to school, you had your friends, you did, you went on adventures, yeah, like you experienced things, but like just stopping and understanding that we are sentient emotional beings is so important. And I do believe evolutionarily that we are addressing these things now. And I think it's so important, as I always say, to do these things when kids are young, to teach parents how to actually, handle their emotions and appropriately and model good emotional like hygiene for their children. That just wasn't something that existed a long time ago, and evidenced by the fact that there's still like a lot of craziness out there, and there's still war, and just people don't know how to handle their emotions because they don't know what they are. They don't even know what they are. So when we talk about emotional availability, it's like, first you have to know what the hell it is and how to navigate it before you can make it available to somebody else. You know what I mean? So it's all about education at the end of the day. And I think shows like this and people who are talking about emotions, it's an important thing. On the other hand, we can't get too caught up in, just the whole paradigm of emotions, because that can suck you under the water too. It's like there has to be some level of balance. But even knowing that there's such an array and menu of different kind of things that we could be feeling as human beings it's so wonderful. And then you have to start unpacking it.
I just had two complete epiphanies listening to you guys. One is
You're welcome. I love epiphanies.
One is when Juji, you talked about when you made the blanket statement about, women accusing men of being emotionally unavailable. 100% hands down, that was me my entire younger life. And my epiphany in that moment was, oh, they may not have been emotionally unavailable. They just weren't that into me. Because I'm sure they went on to meet someone else who they were into, and they may have been emotionally available with that person. How do I know?
Wow.
So that was like a, oh shit moment. And then my second realization or epiphany, which I do know this to my core, but it just dawned on me, Shira, listening to you, is that in order for anyone to be emotionally available, men or women, anyone, you have to be in touch with your emotions. Like, you're not going to be able to be available at all unless you're in touch with them. So, you talk about this range of emotions and learning how to handle your emotions, but you have to kind of go through all that work and make that connection within yourself in order to be emotionally available to anyone outside of you. Have to be emotionally available to yourself first. So that was another epiphany. In Juji, what you said earlier about it being the more, day-to-day smaller moments. I remember once with my husband, we were sitting there talking and I just was sharing something with him. And it was like a decision I had to make about something with work. And I was just talking it through with him. I just needed his ear and I just needed to talk it through. And he was so present with me. He was just looking at me in my eyes, listening, present. He wasn't distracted. His phone wasn't nearby. He didn't make it about him. He held space for me. And I think at some point, I know at some point I ended up like tearing up about this decision. Like it triggered something deeper, I guess. And he just kind of gently rubbed my leg or something and, was just like, hey, it's going to be okay, But I was able to be emotionally available, like where it just sort of naturally happened, right? Like I was naturally got vulnerable as I was talking to him because he was emotionally available by just listening, being present, and being there with me. Like when you talk about those everyday moments, like I can't help but think of that moment because I'm like, that's emotionally available. We were being emotionally available with each other. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that because that's what comes to mind when I think of that,
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that when we emulate that and we are there for somebody else in an emotionally available way, it opens up the space for them to do the same, if that's not their go-to necessarily. I feel like, it can soften people up and allow them, and gives them permission to be there as well. Because I think a lot of people may be even afraid to be emotionally available. They may not know what that is or what that feels like. And in the same way that I think some people, may not lean towards vulnerability, or they have some walls built up. It's difficult for these people to maybe make themselves available, although they might think that they are. I've had that. I I've had that with a family member where, if I were to ask, they would say, "Oh, of course I'm there," and but there's no, I feel like there's no awareness necessarily of what that even is, or what is necessary to be that, in order for the other person to feel okay and safe and okay to give that back in return. There are some people, and we know who they are, the people that, the walls are down, we can talk to them, we can be vulnerable with them, they don't judge us. So yeah, that emotional availability, I think it's a very important, it's key, it's critical in every relationship, especially with a spouse or a partner. And I think it should be discussed more. And like we said, and we always kind of circle back to teaching children, instilling in them these ideas and these, actions and just the knowledge of what it means to be emotionally available will, I think, in and of itself, obviously, bring an awareness that helps them to live in a much more emotionally available way. Again, and like one of you mentioned it, like, who the hell knew about any of this stuff when we were growing up, no idea what vulnerability was or emotions. And it's like later in life, you're able to put it into words. That's what I was feeling. That's what I was missing out on. That's what I could have been doing differently or better, and we get to do that now, 50 plus years later.
Better late than never.
Yes.
Well, what you just said is like a perfect thing to piggyback off of, which is that we are here to teach children from an early age how to be in touch with their feelings. And, it wasn't that way before, but we're heading towards that now. And this conversation isn't exclusively about romantic partnerships, but I feel like as we made these blanket statements about how men are emotionally unavailable, we also have to remember boys and girls are raised very differently. We're conditioned to be okay with crying and be okay with expressing ourselves in that way. And men are not, or they haven't been historically, the tough guy, man up, there's no crying in baseball, like one after the other, phrase that teaches men over time, not even in a subtle way. It's not subtle. The message is loud and clear. You're the man, you're here to be tough. And one of the things that came up for me when I was listening to Kim talk about, her sharing with her husband, it's like, we assume a lot of the times that that's not what husbands are for. We have our girlfriends for that, like we have our, our crew that we go to when there's an issue. And it's like, why is your partner the last person to know when there's something going on in your life that's difficult or challenging or whatever? what if you did go to them? You might be surprised at how they handle it. You know, the fact that they're not here to be super emotional or haven't historically been can actually be a really comforting thing, because they can just see it from a very practical point of view. Now, we talked a lot in an episode about holding space and how it's not about like trying to fix the problem, you know, because I've had that experience too with my husband now. Like, I'm sharing something that's hard and he's like, I wish I could fix it for you. I wish I could, like, I wish I knew the answer. I'm like, that's not why I'm here. I'm not here so that you can fix this for me. I'm here because I need you to know where I'm at right now. And that's the way that we consistently have this connection between the two of us, so that everything isn't just sunshine and rainbows and butterflies all the time. And I can say, I don't need you to fix this, but thank you for listening.
Great point.
Yeah.
I love that. And just making, whether it's your partner or your friend or your parent or whoever it is in your life, just aware of where you're at emotionally, just so they have that awareness, not to fix. But I think when you are aware where someone is at, it does give the other person an opportunity to support you in whatever, however you need them to check in, be aware so they can check in with you. You know, there's so many things that they can do if they're aware. So I love that. I remember saying to my husband, you know, I just need you to know I'm not okay right now. Like, emotionally, I'm not okay. And, you know, he did what he could to assure me things would be okay. But it wasn't even about hearing anything back. It was about just me letting him know. It's interesting because as I get older, I'm realizing, you know, with my friends and family, like, everyone's different. Everyone's emotional availability is different. And only more now do I see and know who I like to go through to for what. So if I'm having a certain issue and I want to be like really nurtured, I might call someone like Shira, right? If I have I don't know, I'm just, all of you are amazing. So don't take anything personal what I'm saying.
Hey, I'm insulted.
And like, I have a friend who's a little bit more like practical and conservative, and like, if I need really good advice on like what I should do about a situation, I know to call her. Like, there's just different, everyone has such a different personality and different ways of supporting me, and are emotionally available differently. And it just, it's great to have that awareness when you have your circle of who you know you can lean on for what. That will just help you in that moment, you know.
That's so great, Kim. I never actually really thought of it like that, but that's more about knowing yourself, right? Because when you don't know yourself, you're kind of like all over the place. And it's like, you know, for me, I just like never really reached out for help because I was like, I realize it now. I always felt so connected to people, but I wasn't emotionally available to me because I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was just like, cover it up, everything's fine, you know? But something that dawned on me throughout this conversation is that language is so important too, because, you know, when I was growing up, it was like anger, fear, sadness, love. That's it. Like, you know, you knew you when you were angry, you knew when you loved something, but I love NVC. I think we've talked about it. If not, we should totally do an episode about it, but it stands for nonviolent communication. And it's got a whole series of emotions. Like, I'm feeling frustrated because da 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 da. And it shows you how to use language to express your emotion to somebody where there's no blame or shame, where it's like, this is what's happening for me. And maybe there's a request involved, right? When you, whatever, it could be something small, like when you leave your stuff around, I feel frustrated because I value order. Would you be willing to clean it up? As opposed to, yo, you leave your shit around here, you know? It's like, that's not being in touch with your frustration in a healthy way. That's just like blaming, shaming, you. So the whole language part of it, we have to like educate people on how to not just know what the different emotions are, but what to do from that space, you know? and again, it runs the gamut, but just language is so important when it comes to that.
Agreed. And I feel that also, and I think a couple of you may have touched on it, like it's okay to tell the person that you're with, what I need from you is, because they may not know how to give it. And I think that's okay too. Like if you have a spouse that you're getting along with and everything's great and you love each other and you respect each other and honor each other, I don't feel like, the spouse needs to be everything for you. I feel like if you do have your sisters or your, best friends, like Kim said, there are different people that we can go to if we're lucky enough to have those people in our life for different things. And I'm exactly the same way. And it feels nice to have that, there's girlfriends I can call up and just bullshit and, whatever, who I may never really reach out to when I'm like feeling down. And there are some that I know will I can reach out to them. They'll either lift me back up or they'll just listen. And sometimes that's all we need is for somebody to listen, just for somebody to be there, just be a sounding board. And I've even said that to people. And I think people have even said that to me, like, I just need a sounding board right now. And then they let me throw it all up. And it's amazing. It's such a release. And sometimes that in and of itself it's just awesome to have. When you know that there's another person there just letting you do that, it's amazing.
Talking is medicine.
Yeah, and they say you got to get it out. Another big thing I learned also is like not just to have a monologue, right? Because you can talk to yourself and in your head about all of the shit that's bothering you, if you're having a bad day or a week or whatever. But if you are having a dialogue about it with someone, again, whether they are just there to listen or maybe to offer some support if you want it and need it, it makes a hell of a difference because it's now, you've let it out.
I've come to sort of a full circle realization during this conversation because I started off by talking about, what it was like in my first marriage. And because I established the type of relationship wherein if I was having a hard time, it was either I kept that to myself or I had other people for that. So it was never my husband. What I was doing was I was creating this foundation where nothing was ever allowed to be wrong. And that's really difficult because inevitably life has ups and downs. And the foundation wasn't solid so that when shit did start to hit the fan, like there was a death in the family, I was really struggling with my business. When I got laid off from my job, like he was never the person that I went to with these things, because to me, I had established that our relationship was not about that. It wasn't about supporting one another and holding space for one another. That was like, it was too much. Like I assumed that it was too much for him to handle. So I didn't allow him to prove me wrong. I didn't, that's not even a relationship, really. It's just like two people who know each other. We like happen to live in the same place,
And how many people are like that? Holy cow.
Right.
Sad.
Too many.
Juji, that's so fascinating because here you're sitting here today completely remarried. Like you're standing in a whole different place and still having these, aha moments of like, holy shit. Like that's big. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, ladies, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
This has been such a fantastic conversation. I feel like this is a great place to wrap. Wow. Well, if you've enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe to our channel and Feel free to comment below, ask questions, suggest topics. We would love that. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.